Most people think life follows a straight line: education, career, retirement. But for many, that line changes, sometimes by choice, sometimes by circumstance, and sometimes by a moment they never expected. This is Not Finished Yet, a podcast about people who started again and discovered their most interesting chapter was still ahead. Each episode shares real stories of reinvention, the risks, the decisions, and what it actually takes to build something new later in life. Because the truth is, you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. Can I just add that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily reflect those of any organisations, employers, or partners connected to them. Before we start, a quick note. A large number of people who listen to the podcast haven't yet subscribed. If you find these conversations valuable, hit subscribe or follow on your platform. It makes a huge difference and helps us keep sharing these stories. Now, let's get into this week's story. Okay, so let's start. Well, welcome to Not Finished Yet. This is a podcast for people who know there's more to come, more growth, more change, and more chapters to write. Today we're diving into something that I think a lot of people feel but don't always talk about. You know, what happens when you've achieved success, but it doesn't feel like you thought it would. You know, today's guest is someone who's lived that journey. So Kate Kayaian, or if I can pronounce that again, Kate Kayaian. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's perfect.
Yeah. Is an author, speaker, and a career strategist, helping high achievers redefine success on their own terms. She's also a former professional cellist who performed at the highest level, only to realise that even a dream career can leave you asking deeper questions about identity, purpose, and what's next. Now she helps people navigate that exact moment in life when success stops feeling aligned. Kate, welcome to Not Finished Yet.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be here with you today.
Brilliant. So let's go back a bit. Your career as a professional cellist, I'm fascinated by that. On paper, that's the dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
What did that life actually look like day to day?
It was amazing. It was amazing. I mean, I started playing the cello when I was just before 4.5, 5 years old. And so it was really my entire identity, right? I practiced 7 days a week. All of my friends were musicians. I went to all the right schools, had amazing teachers, and you're just in this incredible world of people who all love the same thing. I got to travel all over the world and play with interesting people, play interesting music, do interesting projects. It was everything I always wanted growing up.
So at what point did you start to feel that this isn't quite it? Was there a specific moment, or was it more a slow realization over time?
It was a bit slow. I mean, there were a couple of things all musicians also teach. It's just part of it, right? It's your duty to pass on what you've learned from your teachers to the next generation. And I was doing a lot of teaching, and I realized that I was missing performing. And so I decided to perform, like it just felt off. It felt off. And I said, well, I'm going to teach a little bit less, scale that back, and I'm going to perform more. And so I was doing that. And of course, all performances are on the weekends. And so at this point, whereas all of my friends growing up, they were all musicians as well. So if you're performing on a Saturday night, you're in a room full of your friends. You're basically at a party, right? But I had married somebody later in life. I didn't get married till I was 40, and he wasn't a musician. I had moved to Bermuda from the States, where we had a lot of friends who were not musicians. Most of our friends were not musicians. And I was opened up to this whole other world of, weekends. What do people do on the weekends? And it wasn't just that I didn't want to be working on Saturday. It was just that these people had hobbies. They volunteered in the community. They had these rich, vibrant lives apart from their work. And I think to a lot of my colleagues, that just didn't even appeal to them. They just wanted to play their instrument. That's all they cared about. That was just their passion, their craft. And that's wonderful for them. But I felt suddenly like, oh, no, I want some of this other life. And I think that part of me always has. And then I heard this story. I was booking some concerts, and I heard this story come on a podcast about, you You die and you go to heaven, and the first person you meet is the version of yourself that did all of the things you've wanted to do. All of those goals that you've set for yourself, they achieved them. That marathon you always said you were going to run someday, they've got the medal to prove that. The languages that you always said you wanted to learn, they're fluent, right? And so to be faced with that, suddenly I realized that version of myself wasn't a performing cellist. She wasn't running around airports. She wasn't spending her weekends performing. She wasn't trying to, be the best at everything that she did. She had a much more rich and textured life.
Yeah.
And
So
that was a big wake-up call.
So how hard is it to admit, like even to yourself, that something you worked on your whole life might not be the right thing anymore?
Yeah, it's incredibly hard. I mean, it was my entire identity. I had spent every free moment of my life working alone in a room with my cello to be as good as I possibly could be. People had invested in me. I had mentors who had opened doors for me. All of my friends were in this world. It was really disconcerting to think, what if I don't want to do this anymore? Because, Mark, I don't know how it is in other industries, but in the classical music world, there is no example for that. You do not quit. Once you reach a certain level, you do it until you die. I didn't know a single person who had stopped, unless they had an injury or some sort of mental health crisis that forced them to step back. I didn't know anybody who would quit. And here I was perfectly fine. My career was great. Nothing bad was happening. I just felt like maybe I didn't want to do it anymore. And here's the clincher. I didn't really know at that point what I would do instead.
Yeah, because you've come to many people. It's a dream, isn't it? You've got this passion that you're able to, and that get to the highest level as well with that passion.
Yeah,
So explain to me.
Every level is a competition, right? So I kept winning that level of competition. I got into music school. I got a career. I got into that orchestra. I got chosen to play that concerto, right? So to my colleagues, when I would say I'm thinking about stepping back and not doing this anymore, they would be like, what? You won the lottery. Like you did it. You've achieved what everybody wants to achieve. Why would you give it up? It was really a scary moment.
Was there a fear then around that identity? Like, this is not me anymore. Who am I? Did you have that? Who am I if I'm not?
Of course.
And how did that feel?
It felt scary. It felt empty. It felt also, importantly, like an opportunity to decide that for myself. And it sounds all dramatic of, you wake up one day and you decide you don't want to be a cellist or you don't want to do what you do and it's in your entire identity and then you feel like you're nothing. And it's not quite that dramatic. It's just sort of like, okay, if I didn't have to play concerts this weekend, what would I want to do? Maybe I'd want to go to a yoga class and go have brunch with some friends. Maybe I'd want to go for a long walk. Maybe, you just start to fill in those blanks slowly. And now I have a whole process for it because now what I do is I help other people through these kinds of transitions. And I think for me, it was a series of these moments. First, it was listening to that story on the podcast, which made me really be like, what does that version of me look like? Meanwhile, I had, a year and a half of concerts booked ahead of me. And then the next thing that happened, Mark, was I was playing a recital here in Bermuda, actually, which was rare. I didn't perform here often. It was usually out in some other city around the world. But I was playing a recital here in Bermuda on March 13th, 2020. And we all know around the world what that date signified. It was the date that they announced major lockdowns.
Yeah.
And so here I am performing. It was a great concert, great pianist. I was really enjoying myself. And I got up on stage. We all knew what was coming. And I was talking about how this was likely the last time we would all be able to gather like this and hear live music. It was the last time I would be performing in a very long time. And I got a little emotional. I mean, I didn't burst into tears or anything, but people comment, they still remember to this day, like, yeah, it was so touching. You were so emotional about the idea of not performing. And what they don't realize, Mark, and I tell very few people, I mean, now I'm telling the world, but it was relief.
Yeah.
I was feeling the emotions of relief that I didn't have to go on that huge 2-week concert tour a month later, that I was going to have this sabbatical just given to me. I was going to have a break. I wasn't burnt out. I wasn't burnt out at all. It was just that I didn't really want to do it. And I also, it's not in my personality to cancel things. Right. So it's like, well, I've committed to these things. People are counting on me, so I have to do them. I enjoy playing the cello. I'm good at it. It's fine. I show up and I do it and it's okay. But to have all of that wiped clear for me, as horrible as the pandemic was on so many levels, in a way, in a small way, it was a gift to me that it gave me that opportunity.
I was going to say that COVID gave a lot of people space to think, didn't it? So, that what did that literally unlock for you? What would you do? And also, do you feel that if COVID hadn't come along, you'd have had time to think about that?
Yeah, I think it would have happened eventually.
Okay.
I hope, because honestly, I can't imagine, given how rich and happy I am, I mean, not rich in money, well, given how rich my life feels right now, I'll put it that way, and how happy I am in the work that I'm doing, I can't imagine if I was still feeling that obligation to perform. That's really what it was feeling like, an obligation.
No, carry on, Paul, sorry.
No, that's okay. I was going to say, I think if it wasn't the pandemic, something else would have happened. Just like, I really feel like it was just a series of events that were happening to unlock the next layer for me. So when the pandemic hit, okay, so that was March 13th. Now I'm like, okay, I don't have to perform. Great, I can just relax. Thankfully, my husband is a high school and college professor, so he was just teaching online. So, we had income coming in. I didn't have to panic. But a lot of musicians were. And I knew that, I saw an article in the Washington Post come out that summer camps were going to get canceled. And for classical musicians, like high-level, young, high school and college-age classical musicians, going to a summer festival, like a 6, 8, 10-week program, you leave home, you live somewhere else, and you're studying with the top teachers in the world, and you're just practicing all day. You don't have the other obligations of schoolwork and extracurricular activities. You just focus on your music for those summer weeks. They're critical. They're critical to the development of every young musician. And I realized that they were going to be canceled. And so I had this idea. I had done some work in admissions randomly. I had some marketing experience. I had taken some classes in marketing and sales because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But for the previous few years, I followed my instincts. I was like, oh, I'm curious about marketing. I'll take this online course about marketing. I'm curious about this. I'll learn about this. So I suddenly found myself with all of these random tools. And I thought, I'm going to create an online cello festival, an international online cello festival. Everybody's concerts are going to be canceled. So I'm going to get the top cello soloists in the world. I know them all. I'm going to call them up and see if they'll teach. I'll recruit all of the top high school and college age cellists, and it's going to be great. And everybody, all of my colleagues, they said, Kate, you're nuts. This is insane. This is crazy. Nobody's going to want to do this. Nobody likes Zoom. Nobody the sound is terrible. And I made it work, and it was a huge success. It was a huge success. And then other people started coming up with online festivals as well. A lot of them came to me. So colleagues started calling me up, emailing me and saying, hey, Kate, my concerts are canceled. My partner's concerts are canceled. We have no income. Can you help me create some sort of online program like what you've done? And so I started helping people. I started teaching them. I created a little 10-week course called Profit Pivot, and everybody sort of came up with a project idea and they implemented them, and they all found a revenue stream and did something great and worthwhile, and they felt really good about it. And that transformed into another coaching course. And then quickly I learned that if I was going to be coaching people, I could teach them those tools that I had learned. But beyond that, they needed the mindset coaching, right? Because I could tell them, here are the 10 things you need to do to set something up. But then imposter syndrome and resistance and all of those things that we all know and love would creep up. And so I studied coaching and developed those skills so that I was really able to help them through those moments. And Mark, I tell you, the feeling that I got when I was coaching people and helping them in this way was better than the most enthusiastic audience applause after a concert ever.
Yeah, I can get that.
Yeah,
Being
I really
a coach myself, I appreciate that. That gives me the bounce in my step when I come away, and I've cited to that. And I was going to say to you, what was the hardest part of stepping away from that identity, original identity, but I don't get the feeling that it was that hard. But there is a question I'd like to go, because you're talking about reinventing, and you're talking about coaching and helping others. You talk about reinvention being overrated. Can you explain that?
I think so, because I think that sometimes when people are unhappy or feel stuck, they feel like they need to completely reinvent themselves. They need to be a completely different person. And I've just never, in my experience, seen that to be true. I think everybody, some aspects of your life might not be the way you want them to be, but everybody has skills, qualities, character traits that are really helpful and wonderful. And if they can focus on those and pivot slowly to where they want to go, I don't think anybody is so far off that they need to completely reinvent themselves. And I think that that is false. I think that it's the same as somebody who says, "Oh, I'm a total couch potato and I'm going to be a marathon runner, so I'm just going to buy some running shoes and I'm just going to go start running." It's not going to last. It's not going to last, right? So, in my book, I talk about these 3 components of reassessing, redefining, and reigniting. And the example for this, that couch potato to runner, the first thing I would have them do is reassess, why is it that they have been a couch potato? What stories have they been living according to? Maybe somebody told them when they were a kid that they weren't very fast, or they were the slowest kid in class. And they've just lived their entire life with this feeling like they weren't capable of doing it. That just wasn't part of them. And they can start to rewrite that story. They can see how ridiculous it is. Like, one person told me that I couldn't do it, and I believed them. I lived my entire life according to what one person said to me once when I was, 10 years old. I see this all of the time. And so reassessing those old stories and then redefining of, I am somebody who could be a runner. I could do that. I could try, I could learn, I could train, I could get better at this. And then reigniting yourself, put a training plan in place, right? Get that time management going, get the productivity going, get some accountability, get some friends cheering you on, whatever it takes.
So why do you feel that many, like yourself, many high achievers, and I've spoke to a few C-level executives, why do you think they end up feeling stuck or unfulfilled?
I think they pass that point, and they start doing it out of obligation. I think it's really important to acknowledge the fact that we as human beings grow, we evolve, we start to want different things. And maybe it's as simple as, okay, here I am doing this job, and there are these things that I was really excited to do in my job 3 years ago, and I'm less excited to do them now.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to say to you, because do we chase the wrong goals? By the sounds of it, we just you feel that we just outgrow them.
I think we outgrow them. Yeah. I mean, people have asked me, people ask me all sorts of questions about my career shift, and they say, "Oh, do you regret going into music?" Like, like, oh, okay, Kate, like, were you forced into it when you were 5? No, I was excited. And they say, well, does this mean that it was the wrong choice to go into music professionally? Absolutely not. It was 100% what I wanted. That was my goal. I reached my goal, and then my goals shifted. My goals changed. So it's not that let's say you went to law school and you became a lawyer and you were excited about being a lawyer, and then you've been a lawyer for 10 years and you're no longer excited about being a lawyer. It doesn't mean you were never excited about being a lawyer.
This is true. Do you
You
feel
were
people then
excited. You did
ignore?
it.
Do you feel that people ignore that feeling then for too long?
I think they do. Yeah. I
And
think
what
they
do you
do.
think it costs them mentally, emotionally, and even physically by doing that?
Everything. Everything. What I realized and I could only see this in hindsight, when I started coaching and I said, this feeling was incredible. And I realized that those were the things that I loved about being a cellist as well. I loved sharing stories. I loved coaching my cello students through their careers. I loved that coaching aspect around it and the storytelling aspect around it, which is why I'm a writer now. And I think that in hindsight, I can see that my life as a cellist, as wonderful and beautiful and successful as it was always a little bit out of focus for me, right? It was like this beautiful photograph of the most gorgeous scenery, and it was just ever so fuzzy. And now I have a photograph of the same thing, and it's perfectly clear.
Brilliant.
Right? And so I think that people just get used to living slightly out of focus. We just sort of assume like, well, no job is perfect, which is true. No job is perfect. And they get used to that. And I think that society tells us that we're supposed to work towards one career and work towards one big goal and achieve that success. And then we do that until we retire. But the thing is, Mark, that we are living longer.
Yeah.
And we are evolving faster. Life moves faster for all of us. And we have an opportunity now to make a shift at some point. And I think a lot of people are feeling that. And I think a lot of people are feeling guilty about it. It used to be termed like a midlife crisis of like, oh, I hit my 40s, my 50s, and I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go do something else. And I think it's a midlife portal. I think it's an opportunity. I think it's an opportunity for a pivot to have a career part 2.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that then. Let's talk about your framework. You've called it the 3 R's framework, so
Yeah.
the audience should have some real value out of this. We'll talk about that. So you talk about 3 phases: reassess, redefine, and reignite. So let's break it down. Let's go into reassess. What questions should people be asking themselves at this stage?
Yeah, well, it's really a little bit of what I was mentioning a few minutes ago of reassessing those stories. That questioning, where am I, first of all, where am I in my life? Why am I here? What got me here? And what stories are keeping me here? Right? So for me, one of the stories that was keeping me here was, gosh, my parents spent so much money, right? Music lessons are expensive. Instruments are expensive. My parents bought me a cello, and then to even it out, they bought my brother a house, right? Like, this is not cheap. And who am I, after all of their sacrifices, to say, oh, I don't want to do it after all? But then when I talked to them, I mean, my father had passed, but when I talked to my mother, she's like, I don't care. You're an adult. Do what you want. Like, you loved cello. We were happy to support you.
And
it's your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think the warning signs are then? That it's time to reassess. What do you feel they are?
Yeah, okay. I think that when life starts to feel like you're wearing a jacket that doesn't quite fit, which it can be a really disconcerting feeling because you're like, gosh, my body hasn't changed. The jacket hasn't changed. It fit perfectly last month. Why doesn't it fit today? Right? It's just sort of that, I don't understand. And you start to feel stuck. Maybe you just don't feel like going to work. You start to dread Mondays a little bit more. And maybe you realize what's keeping you there is that you like your colleagues, or you like the paycheck, or you like the lifestyle that it's giving you, and there's just something that doesn't feel quite right anymore. I think that's a great time to sit and reassess what's going on, what stories am I living according to. Ask yourself that question of, if you met the version of yourself who did everything you've wanted to do in life, what does that person look like? What have they done? What have they done, and what is that gap between where you are today and where that person is? And why haven't you gotten there? What are the stories that are keeping you where you are and not getting to where you want to be? So that's the reassess, right?
Yeah.
That is, I think, the step that most people skip, honestly.
Yeah. So when I've done my reassessment, and now it's on to redefine, two questions in one really, because it's a bit, I had two kind of ideas, but how do you define the success without blowing everything up was one of the thoughts I had. And how do you separate what you want versus what you've been conditioned to want?
Well, deciding what you want versus what you've been conditioned to want is part of that reassessment, right? Like if you've been conditioned to want to be a doctor, that's a story. That's a story that, like, good people are doctors. People in our family go into medicine. Being in medicine is a worthy job. It's a worthy profession. It's important, right? And so that's a story that you can rewrite for yourself. And redefining yourself without blowing everything up is, I mean, you might have to blow up some aspect of it, but this is what I'm saying about, try to stop yourself from from feeling like you need a complete reinvention. And redefining yourself. In the book, I have exercises to, like, write your eulogy, which is a famous exercise, right? I bring that one in to say, like, at the end of your life, what is it that you want people to say about you? What's important? Do you want them to talk about your career? Do you want them to talk about your family life? Do you want them to talk about your volunteer work? What is important? And so that kind of helps to define who you want to be moving forward. Another thing, simple questions, simple exercises. And my book is part story, so you can read through the whole book start to finish, but
Yeah.
there are various exercises throughout the book. There is a workbook-esque quality through it. And so some of those exercises are like, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Can you tell me, Mark, do you know your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Strawberry all the way, yeah, for me.
Strawberry all the way. Good. Do you know that most people can't answer that question?
Yeah.
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 Or like, what's your favorite color? Or like these very simple questions that maybe you can be like, oh, actually, I can tell you my favorite color is red, but like, haven't thought about that in a while. Like, it's funny. I don't actually own any red clothing. Like, maybe I should go buy something red. It is my favorite color.
But do you think
Right?
that because they change over time, and what they did think it was, they always have red in their head, but over years it's probably defined something different, or they're less, I don't know, focused on that one particular thing?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody. I think it's maybe some people were like, I used to really love red, but kind of like, no, it just feels a little bit abrasive to me right now at this point in my life. So maybe why am I still wearing that red dress all the time? Maybe that's why I always feel a little bit off when I put it on, right? So some people will realize that their favorites, their ideas that have shifted, even in those little seemingly inconsequential things. And some people will say like, I have always loved red. And I don't have any red, like maybe because I've been following trends and the trend is for, to wear baby blue or burgundy or whatever it is for the season. And you realize that you've just been so busy chasing other things that you've fallen away from what you like. I mean, just little things like, what's your favorite movie? What's your favorite kind of movie? What's your favorite genre of literature to read? Are you reading things that you feel you should read? Are you reading just whatever is popular at the time? Or are you reading the things that you really do love to read? Those are the things that go into redefining, and some of them are going to be obvious to you. Like you'd be like, no, strawberry ice cream. I love strawberry ice cream. You're like, okay, great, cool. Going on to the rest, filling out that list, saying like, today, right now, today, who is Mark? What do you care about? What are the things that are exciting to you? How do you want to be spending your time? Right? Who are the most important people to you? What are your values? All of these things go into this. Once we've rewritten the stories and have an expanded sense of what we are allowed to want, and an expanded sense of what we are allowed and capable of doing, then we can start to define who we are within that. Right?
Okay.
And then the third step is to reignite. And this is, I think, where some people try to start and other people get blocked by this. So some people just are like, okay, my example before, like, I'm a couch potato, but I want to run a marathon. So I'm just going to get some shoes and I'm just going to start running. Right? And then they get injured, right? And they dive into the action without proper planning, and they get in trouble.
So what does that look like? What does taking action actually look like then? What does it?
Well, I talk about, the difference between a needle moving action and a rocking chair action. So a lot of people will do that. They'll just sort of dive in head first, without thinking, without planning, and they'll cause a lot of trouble for themselves down the line. Some people will spend a month, right? Let's say, like, I want to start a coaching company. I want to start coaching. And I'm going to spend a month working on my website and a logo. Right? Like, they've gotten their certification, they've done their training, and they waste time, but they feel like they're doing it. They're playing business, they're playing coach, right? What they need to do is get some clients. So rocking chair tasks, I call it, like, you feel like you're in motion, but you're not moving forward. It's just those things. Like, yeah, maybe you need a website, maybe you need a logo eventually, but to spend all of your time and focus and feel like you're moving forward, you're not really moving forward. You're not moving forward in a business until you have clients. That's just the way it is. And so we talk about that difference. We talk about time management. We talk about time blocking and Pomodoro method and all of these things where it was interesting. I asked a lot of my clients, like, what has been some of the most helpful work I've done with you? And they said, helping me with my time management. And it was, the mindset stuff in there, but also just like, when you're a busy human being and maybe you haven't quit your job, maybe you're just pivoting to something else in between while you still have your other job, you're busy. You're a busy adult, right? So how do we squeeze in these, bits of forward motion in an already packed schedule?
Yeah, okay. So the book itself, name the book, please. We can put
it's Beyond Potential. Yeah. And
Beyond Potential, which is behind you there. Yeah,
Beyond Potential.
And we can get that on Amazon, can we?
Absolutely. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on barnesandnoble.com. You can get it on bookshop.org. Yeah.
We'll put some links below, obviously, to that, and to your site and everything at the bottom, and when we do our socials. But for the listeners, as we move on for that, for someone listening right now who feels stuck, where do they start?
Yeah. Well, I have a free resource that can really help them, and it's my quarterly retreat planning guide. And it doesn't have to be started right at the beginning of a quarter. It's just looking at the next 90 days of your life. And it really asks you to figure out what is most important to you now. It's a great resource if you are trying to plan a pivot, because you could say, okay, where do I want to be in this new stage of my life in 3 months? I always think 3 months is the perfect amount of time because it's enough time to actually make a difference. But it's not a whole year where you can get lost, you can procrastinate, right? It's a short enough time that you actually have to take some action in that. And so it can help you step by step from planning to creating to optimizing to organizing your life accordingly. It's a super helpful resource and it's totally free. You can get that on my website. Maybe we can link that in the show notes. You can also find me on DM me on Instagram. And I'll send it to you. But I think that's a great place to start. Otherwise, just ask yourself that question. Figure out where that gap is. If you were to meet the version of yourself that did all of the things you truly want to do, what is the difference between you? Your goal should be that when that moment comes, you're basically looking in the mirror. that there is no difference between you, that you've actually done all of those things that you want to do, and you can just sort of high five that other version of you. But right now, I want you to imagine who that person is, make a list of all of the things that they do, and then slowly start to incorporate that, right? So if let's say they're fluent in Italian, okay, take that quarterly retreat and sort of map out over the next 90 days, can you download Duolingo? Can you start learning some Italian? Can you commit to doing 15 minutes of Italian every day on your commute or something? Just getting going, moving that needle closer and closer to the person you really want to be.
Well, on that note then, what's the one mindset shift that you think changes everything?
Well, I always talk about this theory of the yes if. And in today's age, we're all told we're too busy, we're burnt out, overconsumption, over this, over that, and that we need to start saying no. And so what I'm seeing around us is everybody just says no to every opportunity, to every idea. And I think that closes off a lot of doors. And I'm not saying that we should start saying yes to everything. That's a recipe for disaster. But if we say yes if, and that if lays out certain conditions, right? So could we take a trip to, let's stick with Italy, right? Since we're taking Italian lessons now, can we afford to take this trip to Italy this summer? Yes, if we commit to cooking at home between now and then, we stop going out for meals. If we sell one of our cars, if we, you have to decide what those ifs are that would make it possible. And then you decide if those ifs are worth it. You're like, okay, we could only do this if we sold our car, but we need 2 cars. So we can't do that. That's not going to work. Okay. If we can come up with an extra 10,000 pounds. Okay. Can you? How could you do that? Right. So it really allows yourself to open your eyes to possibility, to opportunities where maybe you thought, there was no way. Like, yeah, there's a way if, and then you decide if the if part is worth it.
Great. So what would you say then? What does this, like a sustainable success, what does that actually look like in real life?
A sustainable success. Well, that is the ultimate question. I think a sustainable success is that you're always doing things that you love and are important to you. Now, they might not always feel great in the moment. Like I said, no job and no life is perfect. And I really don't think it's about being happy. I think it's about being fulfilled in doing work that you love and that you feel is important, and accepting the fact that that might change for you, that you are still growing and still evolving, and allowing yourself to grow and evolve along with it.
Excellent. So let's have a bit of reflection then, just a quick look back. Do you see your music career differently now?
I do. I'm eternally grateful for everything that I had and everything that I did. And I am grateful for everything it taught me. And I see how it is informing the work that I do now. And I also see that what I loved most about being a cellist is what I am doing now, right? It's the coaching and mentoring part. It's the storytelling. It was never about how fast and impressively I could play, although, you had to play well. That was part of the technique, but it was more, that was a means to the storytelling. And I loved telling stories. I loved communicating and reaching out to my audience and connecting with them in that way. And that's exactly what I do, whether I'm writing a book or an article or doing a keynote speech, which I am doing more and more of, and the coaching work that I do with my clients. So I'm realizing that everything that I am doing now that lights me up is what lit me up as a cellist as well.
So basically you had to go through that version of success to really understand this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what does success mean to you today? What does that look like?
Yeah, success to me, for myself personally, it means being able to enjoy my life, to spend my life exactly how I want to have my weekends free, to work if I want to, or to be out on the boat with friends on the water, to live in a beautiful place, to travel, to just be as close to that version of myself that did everything that I wanted to do.
Brilliant. Well, look, I normally have a quick fire round. You've answered some of these already, but we just have 3 or 4 questions. One word answers, or one sentence.
I'm ready. Let's hear it.
So, one word for success today.
Joy.
Joy. What's the biggest myth about high achievers?
That we don't need or want help.
Good answer. Best decision you ever made?
Marrying my husband.
Good answer. One thing people should stop doing immediately?
Ignoring their instincts.
Thank you for that. So, Kate, look, that was brilliant. So much in there that I know is going to be resonate with people listening. So many people out there. This is what we're trying to do: get some real stories for people at that point that you've obviously gone past. I think it really stands out that this idea that just because someone looks successful doesn't mean it feels right. I mean, you've really brought that across, and it's okay really to question that. Just because you were as successful as you were and had the dream job to many doesn't mean you didn't have the right to question it. So if you're listening and something in this conversation has hit you, maybe it's time to pause, reassess, that's what we're saying. Ask yourself what your next chapter could look like. Kate, where can people find you and learn more about your work? We're going to obviously put the links down, but your website maybe.
Yeah, my website is katekayaian.com. So that's KateKayaian.com. That's my website. You can find the book, the podcast, the speaking, the coaching, everything that I do is on there, including a bunch of free resources for you. And I hang out on Instagram, mostly LinkedIn as well. So you can find me on either of those 2 places. I really love chatting with people and meeting new people in the DM. So give a shout, say hello.
Down there. So thanks again for listening to Not Finished Yet. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure please subscribe. That's what we really need you to do. It helps. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, just because you've built something great doesn't mean you're finished yet. See you on the next one. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to Not Finished Yet. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Please see the links to all our socials. Until next time, remember, you're not finished yet.